So we're going to start with the sadhana, the session, and then do teaching and Q&A and stuff like that. This sadhana is got some elements that are very different than the other lower tantra, Kriya Tantra sadhanas. And it speaks about some concepts that you usually only hear about once you're doing highest yoga tantra. And those concepts are peace, increase, power, and wrath. And they're very interesting kind of thought experiments at this level. And then later in highest yoga tantra, there's more depth and layers. But I think that in this case, it's going to work better if we just jump right into the sadhana and do it, and just do it as written, and then I'll unpack it after that. So we're at the sadhana of Chintachakra White Tara. Okay, so this practice starts with a number of prayers and offerings that we do all together out loud. And again, when you say these prayers out loud, it helps purify speech. It engages the mind in a different way. But some people are new to doing group practice. And so the rule with group practice is that you always go the speed of the chanting leader. So if you can do the same tune, that's ideal, but not everyone can. More important is the same speed. So not a couple beats ahead, not a couple beats behind. And if you're not sure, turn down your own volume so you can hear. And especially because I don't have a mic. And then for you guys on Zoom, keep yourself muted because of the broadband situation. You'll all come in at different times, but alone in your house, unless you're going to annoy people, say it out loud. When it's an obvious prayer, go back into silence when it's an obvious visualization. So that's just kind of a group practice general rule. Okay, so we'll just start with a very brief body relaxation and stabilization. And then we'll go into these prayers. So back to the body, strong back, soft front. Just a gentle scan side to side, up and down, front and back, coming into balance, allowing tension to release. And 2 minutes with the breath, allowing surface distractions to settle. And visualize in the space in front, white Tara facing you. Radiant white made of transparent light. Seven eyes, one face, two arms, legs in meditative posture. And then think that all sentient beings are seated around you in human form. Whether it's just a sense of them being here, or you're actually able to visualize. Just feel that we're all together doing this. Refuge in front, sentient beings all around. And then the refuge prayer together, halfway down the page. I and all living beings, as extensive as space, from today on until the essence of enlightenment is achieved. Take refuge in the glorious holy gurus. Take refuge in the fully accomplished Buddhas. Take refuge in the holy Dharma. Take refuge in the Supreme Assembly. I take refuge in the Venerable Lady White Tara, the wish-fulfilling wheel, and the complete entourage of deities. I and all living beings as extensive as space, from today on until the essence of enlightenment is achieved. Take refuge in the glorious holy gurus. I take refuge in the fully accomplished Buddhas. Take refuge in the holy Dharma. Take refuge in the Supreme Assembly. I take refuge in the Venerable Lady White Tara, the wish-fulfilling wheel, and the complete entourage of deities. I and all living beings as extensive as space, from today on until the essence of enlightenment is achieved. Take refuge in the glorious holy gurus. Take refuge in the fully accomplished Buddhas. Take refuge in the holy Dharma. Take refuge in the Supreme Assembly. I take refuge in the Venerable Lady White Tara, the wish-fulfilling wheel, and the complete entourage of deities. I prostrate and take refuge in the Holy Guru and three precious jewels. Please bestow your blessings on my mind stream. In order to attain the fully accomplished state of a Buddha, for the sake of all living beings, I will enter into the sadhana of White Tara, the wish-fulfilling wheel. In order to attain the fully accomplished state of a Buddha, for the sake of all living beings, I will enter into the sadhana of White Tara, the wish-fulfilling wheel. In order to attain the fully accomplished state of a Buddha, for the sake of all living beings, I will enter into the sadhana of White Tara, the wish-fulfilling wheel. And this part of blessing the offerings is only if you have a White Tara empowerment. Om Vajramrita Kundali Hana Hana Hum Pe. Om Sawashuddha Sawadama Sawashuddho Hum. And visualize out of emptiness from 8 Om syllables appear spacious, extensive jeweled vessels, inside of which the syllables Om transform into different offering substances, which are clear, unobstructed, and as extensive as space. And so if you don't have the empowerment, you imagine these offerings are being blessed on your behalf. Om Bhagyamai Hum, Om Padyamai Hum, Om Pupeya Hum, Om Tupeya Hum, Om Halokeya Hum, Om Kandeya Hum, Om Nudeya Hum, Om Shabda Hum. And the instantaneous generation is only for those with the empowerment. The prostrations together, everyone. Gods and asuras with their crowns bow down to your lotus feet. I prostrate to Mother Tara, who is one who rescues from all needs. And then the actual offerings are presented to Tara. Om Guru Arya Tare Sapare Variya Yam Bharyam Yuape Duape Aloke Gante Nuade Shabda Pratisahum Soha. And think that Tara, one in nature with all gurus and Buddhas, happily accepts these offerings. And it generates a special uncontaminated bliss in her holy mind. And then if you've already taken Bodhisattva vows in the past, we renew them and revive them with this prayer 3 times. And if you haven't received them before, you meditate silently on deep compassion. I take refuge in the 3 jewels. I regret all my unwholesome deeds. I rejoice in the merit of all beings. I will hold bodhicitta until enlightenment. I take refuge until complete enlightenment in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill the purpose of myself and others, I generate the mind of enlightenment. Having generated the mind of enlightenment, I invite all living beings as my guests. I will remain in this excellent conduct of the Bodhisattvas. Thereby may I achieve the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all living beings. I take refuge in the 3 jewels. I regret all my unwholesome deeds. I rejoice in the merit of all beings. I will hold bodhicitta until enlightenment. I take refuge until complete enlightenment in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill the purpose of myself and others, I generate the mind of enlightenment. Having generated the mind of enlightenment, I invite all living beings as my guests. I will remain in this excellent conduct of the Bodhisattvas. Thereby may I achieve the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all living beings. I take refuge in the 3 jewels. I regret all my unwholesome deeds. I rejoice in the merit of all beings. I will hold bodhicitta until enlightenment. I take refuge until complete enlightenment in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill the purpose of myself and others, I generate the mind of enlightenment. Having generated the mind of enlightenment, I invite all living beings as my guests. I will remain in this excellent conduct of the Bodhisattvas. Thereby may I achieve the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all living beings. And so you think that the Bodhisattva vows that you've kept purely have increased in strength. Any that were transgressed have now been restored. And if you haven't taken Bodhisattva vows, you can generate a strong aspiration to take them in the future, if that's something that resonates for you. And the 4 immeasurables together. May all living beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all living beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all living beings be endowed with the happiness that is free from suffering. May all living beings remain in a state of equanimity, free from attachment for those they hold close and aversion for those they keep distant. You can repeat those 4 immeasurable thoughts in your mind twice more, connecting with the meaning. And then we visualize. Om Sawa Shuddha Sawa Dhamma Sawa Shuddho Hum. Connect with the emptiness of inherent existence. Out of emptiness, from the syllable pum, comes a white lotus. in the space in front. From an a moon disk. On top of which a white syllable tam, emanating rays of light. The light collects back and arises venerable wish-fulfilling wheel with a white body, one face, and two arms. Her right hand is in a gesture of supreme giving. Her left hand is at her heart and holds between the thumb and ring finger the stem of an Utpala flower that blossoms at the level of her ear. It has 3 blossoms, the center one in full bloom, the right one having already opened and blossomed and gone to fruit, the left not yet opened, still a bud. These 3 symbolize the Buddhas of the 3 times, past, present, future. She is adorned with jeweled ornaments and clad in various silken garments. Her upright body is supported by a moon disk, and she is seated in the Vajra position. At her crown is a white Om, her throat a red Ah, her heart a blue Hum. Also at her heart on a moon disk is a white syllable Tam, which emanates rays of light, inviting from the Patala Buddha field in the south, the venerable wish-fulfilling wheel surrounded by an assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Sai Hum Bam Ho. They become non-dual. Again, light rays emanate from the syllable at her heart, inviting the initiating deities. Please bestow on her the initiation. Goddesses dressed in white, or empowering nectar over her crown. Om Sawatata Gata Abhishekata Samaya Shriyaya Hum. Her body is filled, purifying all stains. The excess nectar overflowing from her crown transforms into Buddha Amitabha. And the offerings are blessed as before, only by those with the empowerment. Om Bhadramrita Kundali Hana Hana Hum Pe. Om Sawa Shuddha Sawa Dhamma Sawa Shuddha Hum. Out of emptiness, from 8 Om syllables, appear spacious, extensive jeweled vessels, inside of which the syllables Om transform into different offering substances, which are clear, unobstructive, and as extensive as space. Om Padyamaya Hum, Om Padyamaya Hum, Om Pupaya Hum, Om Dupaya Hum, Om Halagaya Hum, Om Gandaya Hum, Om Hudaya Hum, Om Shabdaya Hum. The offerings having been purified, transformed, and increased into oceans of nectar, now they're offered to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas embodied by white Tara. Om Haryatare Sapare Variyai Kyam Padyam Puape Duape Aloke Gande Nuade Japta Pratisam Soham. And we prostrate together. I prostrate to Mother Tara, the liberator of beings from existence, the one who liberates from the 8 worldly fears with Tutare, freeing from all illnesses with Ture, all the wisdom and activities of compassion of the extensive Buddhas, appearing in the form of the extremely beautiful goddess, bestowing longevity and supreme attainments to a great number of beings. I prostrate to the one who is extremely white and holds an utpala in her hand. And at the heart of white Tara, in the space in front, is now an 8-spoked wheel with a hub and 3 rims. At the center is a moon disk and a white tongue, encircled by the mantra for increase, Om Tare Tutare Ture, Mama Arya Punya Jana Pushtim Kuri Soha. On the 8 spokes are the 8 syllables, Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha. On the inner rim are the vowels placed counterclockwise. Om, a, I, u, ri, ri, li, I, a, o, a, so, ha. On the middle rim, the consonants are arranged clockwise. Om, kaka, gaga, nga, cha-cha, ja-ja, nya, ta-ta, da-da, ta-ta, da-na, na. Papa, baba, ma, yara, la, va, shasha, shahak, sha, soha. On the outer rim is the mantra of the essence of dependent arising, arranged clockwise. Om ni dhamma hetu prabhava hetan teson tatagato hayavada teson chayo niroda evamvadi maha shramani soha. And so stabilize that. Even if it's just simple rings of mantra light. And if it feels more comfortable, you can shift Tara and the entire visualization to your crown. The seed syllable and all the letters of all the mantras are in the nature of light. Dewdrops of nectar stream forth from the letters. Above Tara, above the crown, is the Lord of the family, Lord Amitayus, red in color, with 1 face and 2 arms, holding a golden vase filled with the nectar of immortality and the gesture of meditative equipoise. Clad in silk and jeweled ornaments, he sits in the Vajra position. He is adorned at the heart with the red syllable Hri, from which hook-like red rays of light emanate in all 10 directions, collecting all of my life energies that have been robbed, stolen, or caused to be taken away, or scattered by human and non-human beings, as well as the essence of the 5 great elements and the life energies and merits of all living beings, the brilliance and dignity of the 3 worlds, and so forth. All the wealth and goodness of existence and the blessings of the body, speech, and mind, the Guru, Buddha, and Bodhisattvas are collected back in the form of nectar and light rays in different colors and absorb into the vase at Amitayus' hands. So stabilizing that. Red hooked light rays going out from the Hriya's heart, bringing back all the life force energy in the form of multicolored light, which dissolves into the base that he holds. By this absorption, white nectar overflows and enters into my crown opening. Rays of nectar flow down, filling my body. My outer body is washed. The accumulation of unwholesome imprints and obscurations, illnesses, disturbances, and obstacles of life are cleansed and purified, thus restoring my life energies, merit, and broken vows and commitments. And I attain the city of immortality. Think thus. Tara above your crown, Amitayas above hers. Nectar light flowing down. And add the mantra for increase. Om Tare Tutare Ture Mama Harya Punya Jana Pushtam Karaye Soha. Om Tare Tutare Ture Mama Harya Punya Jana Pushtam Karaye Soha. Om Tare Tutare Ture Mama Harya Punya Jana Pushtam Karaye Soha. Om Tare Tutare Ture Mama Ya Punyanjana Pushtam Kure Soha. Om Tare Tutare Ture Mama Ya Punyanjana Pushtam Kure Soha. Om Tare Tutare Ture Mama Ya Punyanjana Pushtam Kure Soha. Om Tare Tutare Ture Mama Harya Punyanjana Pushtam Kuruye Soha. Continuing the mantra together with the visualization. and then emanated from the white Tara at your crown. Outside of ourselves is a white wheel made of space iron, with space inside, like two hats joined together. The 10 spokes, above and below, and in the 8 directions, have very sharp points, turning clockwise at an extremely fast speed, thereby cutting into pieces all obstacles. Tongues of flames of light rays burn and swirl, and thus all disturbing forces are completely burnt, like feathers burnt in fire. Think thus. Again, from the wheel and mantras at Tara's heart, white rays of light emanate, filling our entire body, pacifying illness, disturbances, obscurations, unwholesome imprints, and all obstacles to light. And we become so filled with this white light that rays of light go out through the pores of our body and form a white circle of light outside of ourselves, bringing about the accomplishment of all peaceful activities, aided by white Tara. Again, yellow rays of light emanate, filling my body. Bringing about an increase of life, merit, and the wisdoms of hearing, contemplation, and meditation. Filling up with yellow light. The light radiates out, forming a yellow circle outside the white circle, bringing about the accomplishment of the activities of increase, stabilizing that. And red rays of light emanate, endowing me with power and energy to bring the 3 worlds under my control. completely filled up with red light. The light of positive influencing, magnetizing power. And we become so filled with red light that the light radiates out, forming a red circle outside the yellow circle, bringing about the accomplishment of the activities of control. And then dark blue rays of light emanate, endowing me with power and energy to achieve all activities of destruction in the sense of destroying negative states of mind, dominating afflictions, an appearance of fierceness with a motivation of compassion. We become filled with this strong dark blue light. And we become so filled with this dark blue light that it radiates out, forming a blue circle outside the red circle, bringing about the accomplishment of the activities of destruction or wrath, pacifying harmful actions of ourselves and others. And green rays of light emanate, filling me up, endowing me with the power to achieve all enlightened activities. So filled with green light, the light radiates out, forming a circle of green light outside of the blue circle, bringing about the accomplishment of all enlightened activities. And then brown rays of light emanate, bringing about stability of the power of achieving activities and attainments. The light radiates out, forming a brownish circle outside the green circle, bringing about this stability. All these 6 circles are egg-shaped and of one single piece, very hard and strong, cannot be destroyed even by winds at the end of existence. All the space between each circle is filled with fresh, newly blossomed blue Utpala flowers, soft and tender. So hold the form of Lady Tara above your crown while generating, having been facilitated by her, this protection wheel. And if you have the mental space to add the mantra under your breath, do so. But it's okay to just spend some time stabilizing the visualization. wheel, white circle, yellow circle, red circle, dark blue, green, brown. Peace, increase, power, wrath, energy, stability. Hard and strong, though made of light. Tara Chintachakra. Tara Chintachakra. So and each ring of protection is maintained, but you release the visualization. Becoming aware once again of your own body and form. And then purifying any mistakes or obstacles during the practice with the Padmasattva mantra on page 14. Padmasattva samaya manupalaya Padmasattva jero bharishta jero meva Sudokayo meva supokayo meva Anarakta meva savasiri me prayatsa savakama sutsame tiram shriyam ha 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 bhaga Sawatagata Padma Mame Mutsa Padma Bhava Mahasamaya Sattva On. Whatever mistakes I have made because of not knowing or lacking ability or not finding the proper materials, please be patient with me. Om Haryatari Sapare Wari Hayagyam Padyam Yuepe Duepe Aloke Gande Nuede Shabda Pratisahum Soha. All the wisdom and activities of compassion of the extensive Buddhas appearing in the form of the extremely beautiful goddess, bestowing longevity and supreme attainments to a great number of beings. I praise the one who is extremely white and holds an utpala in her hand. Through the merit collected by this practice, may I quickly attain the state of wish-fulfilling wheel. And may I lead all living beings without exception to her state of enlightenment, thus dedicating the roots of merit. Remember emptiness. Okay. So the section after this, where it says offering a torma, this is just for people with the empowerment, and this part is extra. So if you have the empowerment, you don't have to do it, but you're allowed to. So if you wanted to make a mental note about that. Offering a torma is usually done at the end of the day. Most of your practices will wind up having a torma offering at some point, and it's a very powerful way of accumulating merit. And that's all I'm able to tell you at this juncture. But this is a more elaborate Kriya Tantra sadhana than ones you'll come across. And I understand if you're not a natural visualizer, it can be a little bit intimidating, but it also can be very effective for developing your concentration. So the cover of your book has the picture of the white Tara mantra garland with the colors of light, but it's very tiny and the printers didn't do the high definition printing I had hoped. But there is a high definition digital print of it in the Dropbox. It's not in the book, it's in your sadhana text on the cover itself, the blue one. But anyway, there's a high definition PDF that will be sent to you after the retreat that you can really zoom in on and zoom out of and have a good look for. But basically, it seems like it'd be hard to remember how the colors go, but it turns out that whenever there is this conversation of peace, increase, power, and wrath, that is the order that it goes. And then we've got the fun extras of plus action, plus stability. So the idea of protection wheels will come up in highest yoga tantra in a more elaborate form, but in lower tantras, it's incredibly powerful to think, what am I protecting from? What am I holding in terms of what is dangerous? What exactly am I thinking about here? This is a really important sort of series of thoughts, because these visualizations are about protecting others from you as much as protecting you from others. Yeah, so, you know, when you're in a bad space and you're leaking all over the place, everyone was so happy. They were chatting peacefully. They were at one with the universe. And then you came in and you just sucked all the air out of the room with your mood, and everyone went silent and like awkward and like, there's a disturbance in the force, right? You've been that guy. We've all been that guy, right? We've all been that guy. Hopefully less and less as we practice the Dharma, but we're all going to have a bad day. You know, and it's also possible that the more we leak, the more we start to kind of blame others for our own experience and think they're the reason we feel this way. Right? Happens, humans. Yeah, we blame each other for how we feel when it has never been their fault, but certainly they are a condition. So then acknowledging that they are a condition, the protection then helps you not be affected by their toxic mood or their bad vibes or their whatever. So it's adopting this very delicate attitude where you're blaming no one. You're not blaming yourself. You're not blaming them. You're aware that all of the problems in the world are because of karma and disturbing emotions, which is a disease we all share. And we don't want to make each other worse. So these layers of protection are a very nice way of settling and grounding your mind and kind of recalibrating your energy so that you're inviting and projecting what you want and what is healthy. Yeah. Consciously on purpose. Sometimes what can happen with like nice people, we're all sort of nice people. I don't know if this happens to you, but you can sort of start to be affected by people's suffering in a way that makes you codependent, right? And you can start to kind of think, what do you need me to do? I'll do anything. What do you need me to do? I'll help with this. I'll do that, even though it's totally their responsibility and they should be doing it. And by you doing it for them, it disempowers them and creates an unhealthy dynamic. But you think you're being helpful, right? And so you like go and like fix their business. That's not the healthy compassion that we want, right? We don't want to be all up in everybody's business. Mind your own business, right? Let them live their life. You live your life, but still you're taking full responsibility. And it's so easy to get confused how that looks, what that means. Yeah, how do you be fully committed to the welfare of sentient beings, taking responsibility for the enlightenment of all sentient beings, this like heroic attitude while being totally hands-off and detached. Yeah, and it's an experiential thing you have to sit with. What does that look like? To be all in and hands-off. Yeah, because people got to live their own lives. And anything you try and do for them, then they can't do it themselves. What you want to do is orchestrate and facilitate conditions for people to put themselves together, right? And to reach health and well-being and connection and depth. So what are the best possible conditions we can create for them to heal themselves? So these mentalities are really interesting. So the first ability that you want to have, you want to invite and you want to project both, is peace, right? That's your first thing, peace, pacifying, which just means just that, to pacify disturbance, to settle conflict. You know, it's just kind of everyday mediation skills, but it's also that very deep quality of bringing soothing and relief and ease. And it's something that you probably do very naturally with like an animal that wants attention, right? The dog comes up to you and you just naturally pat their head gently and they're like, oh, thanks. Pacifying. Yeah. But how do you do that with human beings without being condescending and patronizing and obnoxious or placating or creepy in some way? Yeah. It's delicate, and it's not really about the behavior. It's about the mentality. And we get lost in, what should I do? What should I do? It's like, do whatever you normally do when you're coming from a healthy place. Don't overthink what you're going to do. Think of how you are, and then just trust yourself that it'll be your best work. Because some people do want space, time, gentleness. Some people want conversation, connection. Some people want this, some people want that. And you can read it in the moment. Don't preempt it. But if you're kind of going in guns blazing, I'm going to fix things, it'll have the opposite effect. Yeah, or you'll fix it for a second, and then as soon as you leave, it'll all fall apart. Yeah, we kind of want to make ourselves not indispensable. Yeah, we want to put ourselves out of a job. Yeah, so they can do it themselves. So to pacify, you have to be able to pacify your own negative states of mind and pacify your own anxiety and depression and agitation and annoyance and irritability and criticalness and all of that. So that white ring is inviting support for that from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And then the best of you that's able to do that, sending it out to all the sentient beings. So it's always both directions, these wheels. Does that make sense? Both directions. You're inviting, I need support for this, but I already can do this to a certain extent. I'm calling in backup to help radiate it out. So when we're in a kind of like codependent, helpy helper kind of mood, it can feel like you're like absorbing everybody's bad mood, or you're like hyper vigilant to everybody's little energies. And, you know, are you okay? Are you okay? And it makes you tired. You know, when you get so-called compassion fatigue, even though there's no such thing, you get empathic distress, right? Empathic distress, where you're like too tuned in to everybody's suffering and you've identified with it and it's pulling you down, right? As opposed to real compassion, which doesn't make you tired. Yeah, but it's hard for us to distinguish the difference. So when you're sending out, you don't get that like absorbing feeling of taking on everyone's crap and everybody's suffering and all of their heaviness. Yeah, even just experimenting with, what if I'm just sending out rather than pulling in all of the feedback I'm getting from all the sentient beings in my life? Because if you're an intuitive person or you're a very tuned in person, all of this information you're getting about people and other sentient beings, you're understanding something, about their suffering, but it doesn't mean you're accurate. Like, that's the tricky thing, is that we've been right enough times that we just assume what we're tuning into is true, but it's not always. Sometimes we're full of it and it's just our projections and our assumptions of what we think is going on for them. So rather than trying to like micromanage your intuition and like try and be precise about what exactly is going on for them, leave it alone. Mind your own business, right? Just send pacifying energy. And if they need it and are receptive to it, it will touch them. And if they're not receptive to it or they don't need it, it won't. You know, it really actually lightens your load to get less fiddly and specific about everybody, because you're wanting to do all sentient beings and you're not clairvoyant yet. So how about just white light out? Do you understand a little bit what I'm talking about?
Yeah, can you clarify the empath, what you said? You rewind yourself?
Empathic distress is when you are seeing someone suffering. You're a nice person, you see their suffering, but in seeing their suffering, you start to suffer.
Right.
It's like a straight mirroring. But we will call that compassion. That's not compassion. It's having empathy and getting distressed on the basis of your empathy.
Right, and you were saying that's bad.
Yep. Yep. Empathy, good. Empathic distress, bad.
So how do you stop yourself from that?
Compassion instead. Yeah, and this whole process of like stay with it, right? Like, you know, if these are new concepts, they'll take a while to brew. They'll take a while to brew.
Well, I guess it's not empathetic distress, it's just sort of sometimes more overwhelming. Empathetic overwhelmed, you know, it's not specific.
Yeah, and that is not what we're aiming for, but that is kind of what the world tells us compassion is. So it's understandable we get them tangled, right? You watch the news, you see something tragic, you're just like, oh my God, what can I even do? Those poor people, and then you're like really down and heavy. In what way is that helping them get out of their mess, right? So, but it's natural. I'm not saying it's not natural or not, you know, but I'm saying that's not what we're aiming for when we're going for compassion.
Okay, I understand.
Yep.
My question was, how do you not, when you have that empathetic overwhelm, how do you like release it?
This one I'm talking about. Yeah, wait for it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, from a sutra tradition, you could use good analytical skills like compassion includes bearing witness to suffering and acknowledgement of the possibility for freedom. Both. So then you're not overwhelmed by what you see. You're trying to see more so that you're getting the big picture of things. Yeah. It's like if you're with a little kid who skins their knee, and maybe it's their first skin knee, and so they don't know how big a deal it is yet, and they're like looking at the adult to see, like, is this a big deal? Should I cry? Should I cry? I don't know, cry. Have you ever been with a kid and it's like their first owie, right? And if you're like, oh my God, they're like, I know, oh my God. And then they start crying, right? Or if you're like, oh, whoops, sorry, honey. And you pick them up and you dust them off and give them a little kiss. And they're like, oh, so no big deal, no big deal. Okay, and off they go, right? They're resonating with you, right? And they're tuning in to you. When we're with people who are suffering, we need to be bigger than their suffering. Like we are with a little kid who's had his first owie. We're not saying it doesn't hurt at all. It hurts to skin your knee, but you know it's not the end of the world. You know they're not going to die from their skin knee. You have a bigger context about a skin knee than they do. You know the potential for their healing. You know, because they're a tiny little person, they're going to be healed in like a week. You know, that same skin knee for us is going to take like a month. You know, you're thinking it's fine. It's fine. So you're able to see that they're hurting. Comfort their hurt, address their hurt, but it doesn't make you depressed to see a little kid skin their knee because you know the context. We need to be like the adult of sentient beings or like the grown-up of sentient beings and see their suffering in a similar light of that is devastating, that is horrible, like what is happening in Ukraine. That is unacceptable, that is horrible, that is terrible what is happening. And we need to be big enough to see that is not of the world, that is not the fate of those people, that is not permanent, it never has been. Every war ends, gets sorted, there's peace, then another war breaks out, and then there's peace, and this is the way it goes, and the cycles of violence will continue until sentient beings are enlightened, it's within a greater context, and the terrible suffering we see in front of us, we're not going to ignore, but we're not going to be pulled down into the depths of despair about it, because we know it's not the whole story. And we also know that even right now in this distress, the reporters are going, look at this horrible thing, look at this horrible thing. Not all the everyday kindnesses and resiliencies and brilliant problem solving and community connections that are happening in those places of distress, which are like bringing out the best of people, that if we were to see it, we would be like, oh my gosh, people are amazing. You know, we're grown-ups, we know this, but you can get sucked into, here's what's on the screen, that's all there is. And then of course you get tired and distressed. So just from a sutra perspective, you're consciously going to the big picture all the time while acknowledging the immediate. If you forget the immediate, then you become cold and you become disengaged, not just detached, disengaged. That's not what we want. You're fully engaged, but you have a big enough picture to see it in a context, right? So, you know, keep using that example of when you see a little kid hurt themselves and they're more worried about it than you are, or they're not sure how worried about it to be, or they're just in a muddle of, is this a big deal or not? You can model how big a deal it is and not be distressed by their distress and still be bringing healing solutions to them. And when you were the kid, also remember what it felt like when the grown-up treated your suffering with some sort of respect, right? They weren't like going, oh, you poor thing, you'll learn when you're older, that's no big deal, in this like condescending pity way. Then you feel like crap, right? So you're remembering that compassion always has an element of respect to it as well. So you're being the big picture, you're being the grown-up, but you're not condescending because you're absolutely respecting their Buddha nature. And who gets to enlightenment first? We have no idea, right? No idea. We're all just in it together. Some of us are a few steps here in this area and a few steps behind in this area, and growth is not tidy and linear. So we're all in it together. And if we happen to be the one with mental space to hold the big vision, we should, because sometimes we're not that person and we're the one that needs to be held. Yeah. So all of this requires a great flexibility and creativity of mind. And, you know, you don't need to force it. It's new. Just, you know, kind of gently play with it. See what happens if you just do what it says. And, you know, I've led it in the way for people without the empowerment, but as written is for people with the empowerment. Either way, it's very powerful practice. So to pacify is one skill we need. To be pacified is one blessing we want. Both. White circle, right? Then increase, yellow circle. What do we want? Abundance, resources, momentum. Yeah, all those things, abundance, resources, momentum, kind of vitality, strength. Yes. Do you know when you get a head of steam with a project and then you get a cold or something and you lose 3 days, how hard it is to start again and keep it going? Whereas when you're just going at a nice speed, you can get so much done. But these interruptions cause so much kind of energy suck, right? So when we are looking at increase, what we're wanting is something to hold and sustain the energy we have, and then to also increase it. So increasing abundant energy in like a worldly, everyday, friendly context is like your friend that you invite to dinner who always brings more than is necessary. Right? You know, you're like, come over for dinner, I'm cooking. And they say, what should I bring? And you say, oh, don't bring anything, I got it covered. And then they like come with a giant dessert and like a series of groceries and also flowers. And you're like, all right, let's have more people over then. Yeah, they're like one of those abundant people, right? It's abundance. They're not in deprivation mentality. They don't keep track of whose turn it is to pay at the restaurant, you know, not because they're full of pride and full of riches, but because they genuinely just love to offer that kind of abundance, right? And think of when you're in that, I don't need to be recognized, I don't need to be paid back, I will never run out kind of wellspring that never ends mentality of that like hostess with the mostest kind of a feeling in a worldly sense. Increase is something you'll see happen with the lamas a lot, where the center can get a little stagnant and things get kind of stuck and people get kind of set in their ways and they want something to happen and it's just stuck. And then the Lama comes and it like breaks up the log jam. Yeah, and then suddenly all of these abundant resources flow and a magic benefactor appears from Singapore and some like, all sorts of cool stuff happens. And it's like all these like stuck projects get new life force. So we want increased energy and we want to send increased energy. Yeah, just like with pacification, we want it and we want to send it both directions. So increase is the same. We want to be the abundant, not deprived, feeling person with so much generosity while still being practical. Don't get weird, right? Be practical about your actual resources, but kind of give with this like open-handed, not needing to be recognized, not needing to be praised, just like, I'm so happy to share sort of vibe. Again, like use a little kid example of when you've seen little kids in a really, really good, happy, comfortable mood playing with their toys. And then random new child comes and without even thinking, first child just hands them their extra truck. They're like, hey, a person, truck. Okay, continuing. When kids are like happy playing and they like want to share and they're so excited to share as opposed to when they're like, I need all of the trucks and none of the friends, strangely. But now I'm sad, which like, we're not that different now, are we? Yes, right. So when you get into that hoarding mentality, that miserly mentality, you deprive yourself of the very connections you so desperately want. Right. Yeah. Anyway, I always have a story with this one, which is my very best friend who I met when I was 4 years old. I was sitting in my backyard playing with my Little Ponies. I had an entourage of My Little Ponies. I was playing with them and she comes running into my yard from across the street. She goes, hi, you just moved in? And I was like, yes. She was like, will you be my best friend? I was like, yes, here's a pony. And now we've been friends ever since, right? It was like, I wish it was so easy to make friends now, right? But like, that was the basis. She was like, you are here, I am here. You have ponies, I like ponies, done. Sorted for life, right? The decades go by, still besties, right? But I think that it's really impressive to see when you've been in that space or experienced someone else in that space, how easy it is to be together, right? There's not all of these like monitorings of like who's one-upping, there's just all of this, I don't know, subtle, weird energy between people when one of them is miserly and afraid of being deprived, or like wants to be the one who is generous from a place of ego, either way. And when nobody's keeping score is so relaxing. Yeah, so that like increase, right? So we want to invite it from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and from the best part of sentient beings. And we want to give it from the place of identifying as Tara, if we have the empowerment, or from Tara facilitating it, sending it out. Yeah, increase. Okay. Then power, which is sometimes called magnetizing or controlling, this red one. Yeah, red circle is power or controlling or magnetizing, sometimes depending on your translator. And this is the positive influence. Yeah, where it's like your presence immediately brings the best out of people. Yeah, whereas, sometimes when you're in a bad mood, it begets more bad moods and it's a ripple effect of bad moods. Yes. And you become a kind of a domino effect if people are all kind of ready for a bad mood. You can also create a domino effect of positive moods when you're in this kind of energy. So what you're wanting is to elevate any that you're in. Yeah, like elevate the conversation, elevate the content, if relevant, but at least elevate the energy to something more spiritual, even if you're just talking about the weather. Doing it in a way that's like, how can I connect more people to each other? How can I make more deep connections with this? How can I bring out the best in people? But also, we want the best brought out of us. Yeah, part of why we like being around the lamas or we like being in Dharma centers is that it meets us at a different place than when we're like, I don't know, playing volleyball or something. right? It meets us in a different place. It brings out the best in us. And that best of us part is the part that we really want to kind of identify with, that part that is the seeker, that wants to go deeper, that wants altruism, that wants connection. You know, that part is met just by the Dharma Center and holy objects and people all trying to practice. Already there's a certain amount of that energy there. But then by inviting it and wanting to send it, it's more. So the word control is tricky because it can sound really manipulative or it can sound kind of creepy in some way. And so remember the context of this red circle related to control. It's about magnetizing the best. Yeah. Or bringing out the best. It's also about having the power to dominate what is negative. Not the people, but their negative states of mind. So we want our words to have impact. So in a sutra perspective, we look at karma from the perspective of if people don't listen to me, even when what I say is important, or people don't believe me, even when what I say is true, that's obviously negative karma from the past ripening. Maybe it's many lifetimes ago. I need to purify. And we want to increase the power of my speech by saying words of Dharma, words of prayer, words of, connection and harmony. Sutra perspective, that stands. Yeah, that stands. But then with the Tantra perspective, you're elevating that to, may my words have weight, may my words have influence, and may all of that power and quote control lead to bringing the best out of people on the spiritual path. So you're just taking the same basic ideas and elevating it, and not just with words, but with everything. Yeah.
Could the word control also be like self-control in terms of like morality?
Yeah, in terms of morality, self-control, for sure. Yeah.
Control is what brings us power?
Yeah, all of it is like, both directions. Yeah, definitely both directions. And when you're thinking of control, you can also be thinking in terms of like inspiration and setting the tone. Right? Like inspiration and setting the tone. When you're in a group of people who don't know each other very well, and there's kind of a weird awkwardness, like, how do we make tea? And then someone's feeling confident and they're like, we shall make tea this way. Let's form a line. Here's the milk, and they're just kind of like confidently making it happen. That's a very basic example. Or you're at a dinner party and nobody's talking because they don't know each other, and it's kind of like awkward groups of people doing chit chat, but it's kind of tense. And then some like big, warm, abundant personality comes in and like sort of like knocks all of the edges off of the awkwardness and helps like elevate the mood, something like that. So this kind of energy elevated where you're able to set a tone that is healthy. You're able to create kind of an inspired environment that brings out the best in people. So again, all of these are thoughts that underpin the sadhana. You don't have to have these thoughts while practicing the sadhana. These are all the underneath psychologies. Yeah. And so it's just, some of it you'll remember, some of it you won't, but it'll be repeated in a million different forms if you keep going with Tantra. And so it's just planting seeds. And, I know I give you guys a lot of information all at once, and I don't expect you to remember any or all of it, really. Just trying to have a sense of little sparks of worldly insight that makes sense to you in your practice that you can hold on to. And then maybe when you're reading commentaries down the track in your practice, you'll be reminded, oh, that's what peace means. Oh, that's what increase means. Oh, that's what power means. Yeah, you'll be reminded, it'll kick in. So just, gently, don't, sort of feel like you need to force understanding of the concept. We're just kind of getting a general sense of it. So peace, increase, power, and then we have wrath. And in this translation, it's called destruction, which is even more tricky than wrath. Like destruction, what? Buddhists? I thought you were all nice and love and light and anti-violence. What's going on? Dark blue light, sometimes called black, sometimes called blue, sometimes called dark blue. Tibetans are weird about color. That's another conversation. Argue with Thangka painters about it. It's very fun to hear them rant. Okay, dark blue. So dark blue, wrath, or destruction. What are you intimidating? You're intimidating negative states of mind, your own and others. When you're with people that you can't get away with any crap, right? but also when it's the people you can't get away with any crap, but they love you so much and you don't feel sad and oppressed by that. If you have a connection with Venerable Rabina, she can be a very good example of this, right? She will shout at you, she will swear like a sailor, and you just feel so warm and loved, right? You know, she'll say, "Are you stupid? Do you know what I'm talking about?" I'm like, "I do know what you're talking about, and I'm not stupid." Thanks. You just feel all warm. Some people in a certain context. Other people are like, "That's a lot. I'm going to need another teacher." Different strokes for different folks. She's just an example, but she's a good example because when she speaks, it's in a very, sounds like anger, but isn't anger. Sounds like anger, but isn't anger. So this is not the same as like making peace with your domestic violence situation and letting people yell at you out of anger and being sort of a, you know, in a victim mentality. Don't take it that way. What we're talking about is trying to develop the skill that when needed, we can have forceful power that hurts no one. Yeah, we can have that kind of direct fierceness that doesn't leave anyone scarred afterwards. Usually we need to get angry before we're assertive, and that is very unfortunate. We want to be able to have that kind of bold assertiveness free from anger, but with the same passion as anger, when needed, when relevant. Do you feel this, the distinction? Yeah, and, you know, and wrath can come in handy, really, when, you know, you're in places that are dangerous, when you're in places where people are unruly, when you're in big crowds. Really having a wrathful ability is something that, especially for women, can be a very useful tool because we're not used to being assertive until we're just pissed off. Yeah. That's probably true of all humans, but especially if you're trained, you're not allowed to be angry. You can be depressed, but you're not allowed to be angry. You can be passive aggressive, but you're not allowed to be angry. You know, like all those things that we get squeezed into as women. What if you could just be bold and direct and assertive, but not wait for yourself to be pissed off until you do it? It'd be great, right? You'd just be a really clear, direct communicator. Yeah. Now, some people still might read it as anger because of their socialization, and that's annoying, but whatever, that's their business, right? So I don't know, Australians are very good at this. I lived in Australia for 15 years and it took me a while to get used to it. But after a while, I started really appreciating their kind of like fierce, wrathful affect, because it meant that you didn't have to do all of this like tiptoeing around things. You could just cut to the chase. And it was with such good humor and with such kind of a friendliness, they could just swear the heck out of you and you just kind of giggle, you know, and they could yell at you and you'd be smiley, you know. Yeah, so anyway, it's interesting. Wrath is not needed very often, but when it is needed, it's very useful. Yeah. My story about wrath is I used to be the baby nun at the nunnery. I was the baby. I was 21, I was very little, and it was my job to look after the Gompa. And we had this person with some severe mental illness who had post-traumatic stress disorder, who had been seen war situations, and the war situations were somehow peripherally related to Christian fundamentalists. So this person hated Christian fundamentalists, like with a passion. It was fascinating. It was palpable. And they equated Christian fundamentalists with just regular Christians, like a nice Methodist. Like they just mixed it all together as if it was all the same thing. And Lama Yeshe, in his wisdom, knew that so many of us had come from a Christian background that he put this sweet little cross on the heart of our Shakyamuni Buddha statue at Chenrezig Institute. So it was just the same as this one, but he put a tiny little cross that he'd gotten like at a thrift store or something at the heart of Shakyamuni Buddha to kind of marry up the two traditions. And it was this beautiful story from the 70s. So anyway, this person with the post-traumatic stress disorder saw the cross on Shakyamuni Buddha, ripped it off, ran out and like threw it away, and we could never find it again. And it was so sad because it was such a nice like Lama Yeshe story. We love Lama Yeshe stories. And I was the Gompa manager, so it was sort of my responsibility to like address this. And so I said to her, I said, "Oh, when you do that, it makes us feel very sad because of our connection with Lama Yeshe. And, you know, I know that you have your scars and I really want to honor and support." And I was using all the sweetness. right? Like all the female sweetness, so sweet, so patient. And she just walked all over me. Yeah. And she was in her 50s at the time, and I was in my early 20s at the time. She just walked all over me. She's like, you little pipsqueak, I'll do what I like. And then she was like on a rampage, and she started throwing out all sorts of things in the gompa. Like, it was so full on, you guys. So she would go in after hours, find ritual implements that she didn't understand, think that they were like poorly made or represented something she didn't like, and she would just throw them away. And we're like, okay, so do we have to start locking the gompa all the time? What are we going to do? And I asked my teacher, and he said, you have to be wrathful. I was like, I can't be wrathful. I'm 22. I'm only little. I'm like, shouldn't I be sweet? I was in my sweet phase of life. Did any of you have a sweet phase? Yeah, a sweet phase. And that sweet phase was not holding me in good stead, but I was so confused because I was being so nice. Right? I was being so nice and so patient and so understanding. So I thought, what is wrath? What is wrath? What is wrath? And I really had to sit with what is wrath, because I did not want to be angry, and I did not want to give in to anger, and I didn't want to hurt this traumatized person worse than she was already hurt. But she needed to stop throwing away stuff. We needed the things, they don't exist from their own side, but we needed the things. And so I set my bodhicitta motivation as best as I could in my infant form. And I went up to her and I very strongly said, if you ever throw anything away without asking me again, you won't be allowed in the gompa. And I meant it. And, and here are the things that I'm going to do to make sure that that happens. And if you honor the boundaries, you're welcome here always, but I was just really firm and decisive. And then she laughed and she gave me a hug and she's like, fair enough. And we've been friends ever since. And I was so bewildered, right, that it was just this one direct, firm statement. And it was fine. That's all she needed. Some people need strong, fierce discipline, but only if it's loving. If I'd been angry at her, she would have won, because she was way better at anger, of that form than me, right? She was a powerful person from Eastern Europe, right? She was good at anger. I was not good at anger, right? I was good at any number of other afflictions, but anger was imploding, not exploding, right? But because it was wrath, it settled her, right? So maybe in your life, you stood up for yourself out of a place of the greater good, right? Maybe for the welfare of the family or the welfare of the organization or the welfare of whatever reason, and your strength was conditioned by kindness. And then it worked, or it didn't, but it didn't have the scarring effect. There's no guarantee any of this will work. These are all skills that we need to keep developing and developing all the way to enlightenment. And that's the only point at which we can know exactly which one is needed when. But in the meantime, we've developed them all, and then try and be spontaneous in the moment. But it's a conditioned spontaneity, even though that sounds like a paradox. Yeah, or a conditioned intuition. Yes, where you've developed all these thoughts and all these tools in the background, and then by being present in this moment, the right one comes forth. Does it make sense? So peace, increase, power, wrath, and then you have energy, which is just regular Tara energy, swift, enlightened activity, that ability to just get off the seat and go, that efficiency. And that's what that energy component is, what we'll talk about after lunch, and how to keep and develop energy from a lot of different angles. So that green that goes on the outside of the 4, that green is just a classic Tara energy. And then the brown, which in our picture is pink, but anyway, the last circle, which is brown or pink, is just to stabilize all of that. Yeah. So these circles of protection, these circles of inviting power and then sending out power, it'll take a while to kind of unpack it. But if you can get a general idea from this practice, it'll be similar themes later. So it's not like you'll have to radically learn new content when you get into highest yoga tantra. It'll be variations of these same ideas, just more layers to it. And hopefully you're finding that there's enough repeated kind of things in all of these different sadhanas that we've been looking at. There's some key features that you see in every one. And you'll start to get used to the general structure of all tantric sadhanas, and they won't all feel so new, because only the center of them is going to be different deity to deity. So peace, increase, power, and wrath. Do you want to ask about any of those four or clarify? Yeah.
On increase, does that have anything to do with, like, when we say maybe virtue is not an increase to the more about like same energy?
Yeah. Ray was asking about, like, in our classic dedication prayer, like, may the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow, that may that which has born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Is it that kind of increase? Yeah. It's the merit increase, the momentum increase, that energy, that increasing abundant, that, yeah.
I just had a clarifying question on the blue energy in the example that you were using. And that as we progress on the path, when our intuition shows reaction, because we pacified some of our issues, that we're better at it because we're better human. You know what I mean? We're more likely, 20 years down the line than we were 20 years ago to react better in that situation because of our practice. So can we take confidence? I mean, am I making any sense?
I mean, certainly practice makes perfect. Certainly. Yeah, certainly. I think, are you saying, like, are some skills going to be more effective than others because of the experience bring to them?
Yeah, I'm thinking, like, if you're quite young, you might react in anger in that situation, and as time goes on through the practice, we're better at the wrathful because of our practice, hopefully.
I think, yeah, I guess what I'm reacting to is to equate wisdom with age is natural and
not age, but practice.
Yeah, age and practice. No, I think that it depends on how you learn your lessons, right? And the definition of an affliction is that which disturbs the mind. So some people get a lot better at wrath as they practice, as they age, as they experience life, and some people get worse because they're full of resentment and disappointment and all the ways the world has done them wrong and all the ways that people suck, and they get more and more cynical and jaded. So it can go either way, right? So I guess there's not an inevitability, right? You have to stay very grounded in your maintenance of inner peace. And inner peace sounds so cliche that we overlook the profundity of it. But that's the place we need to start from, is that very deep, grounded, calm, relaxed, focused mind. And then from there, peace, increase, power, wrath, patience, loving kindness, everything flowing from that space has the best chance to be in alignment with your life experience, your life logic, your practice, everything. But when you lose that deep inner calm, and when you lose that deep, clear focus, you can be as bad as you ever were. Yeah. You can be like the 13-year-old screaming at your mother, even when you're much older than that. If you leave the window open for it, it's going to look different. It's going to be socialized differently. But part of the reason why we maintain mindfulness is to maintain the elevated minds that we've developed. So it might be that you don't react the way you used to as often, for sure. But when you do react that way, it might be just as bad as it ever was.
Oh, and so can I reflect what you said? That an example would be when you go back home.
When you go back home is the best example. Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that'd be the best example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're all with you. Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And if you can keep practicing while feeling the agitation and the urge to react the same old way, and you don't, that's like pro level work. Yeah. Yeah. When you feel the urge to, and you go, not this time. Nope. Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm sensing like there's a reason that one comes before the next, in that we have to pacify in order to get to
Increase in order to get to
be
power.
increasing like the right thing, and then to be having power in the right way. Like peace first.
I think yeah, you're right that there's that order exists for a reason. It is kind of like it's more in terms of which ones you can get good at first. So it's like get good at pacification first, then get good at increase, then get good at power, then get good at wrath. Like in terms of what's going to take the most merit, energy, time to develop, working on pacification first. Yeah, and getting really good at it. It's not necessarily easier, I guess that'd be the wrong way to put it. It's more like it's more foundational. So if you don't have the power to have pacification of yourself, your negative states of mind, your difficulties and your behavior and your urges and the ability to pacify others a little bit, then if you add wrath to it, it's just going to explode back into anger. It's like not going to have the stability. It's just like Tantra itself. You can't really practice well until you have the 3 principal aspects of the path firmly ingrained and believed in. Yeah, and very much motivating your life. So, you need your renunciation, you need your bodhicitta, you need your correct view, and then you're doing these elevated sort of mantras and visualizations, and it's working subtly on your energy system, and it's not going to make you go crazy because you've got the stability holding you.
And like also integrating the stabilizing.
Yeah, the stabilizing is everything. But I mean, Tara's, like all Buddhas, is either sitting or standing on a lotus, sun, and full moon. And that is always the 3 principal aspects of the path. Lotus, renunciation, very tiny sliver of sun disk, which you can't usually see, sliver of sun disk. And then moon is the one that you see her sitting on. So wisdom, realizing emptiness is the sun, bodhicitta is the moon. And with a lot of highest yoga tantra deities, it's swapped, emphasizing the sun rather than the moon, but one is always implied, even if only one is seen. Yeah, they're both there. So every single deity, 3 principal aspects of the path are depicted, and it is not an accident. They're either sitting or standing on them. Have a look, prove me wrong, unless the artist was dodgy. Might be a dodgy artist. Right. Yeah, it's essential. So, we enter into Tantra whenever we enter into Tantra, and then we tidy ourselves up, Yeah. Other questions? Peace, increase, power off? Yeah.
So I've done a couple sadhanas where they use the different colored lights. This is the first one with the circle, kind of how it grows. Is that unique to this specific power practice, or is it used in other?
Yeah, this going out concentric circles, there will be variations in a lot of other sadhanas for sure. Yeah, and the concept of protection wheels or protection light will be repeated in a lot of sadhanas, but usually highest yoga tantra. Yep. And when it's like 5-colored light, don't mix the lights. 5-colored light is related to 5 Buddha families. And while it's related to peace, increase, power, and wrath, don't mix them together or you get yourself confused. Yeah. So 5-colored light, like in the Chenrezig Sadhana, that's 5 wisdoms. Yeah.
And the brown, it just seems.
The what?
The brown.
Oh, the brown.
It
Yes.
just seems odd, and is it as thick as the other ones, or just sort of like the layer? I mean, it's not very black.
Maybe that's why Fred made it pink in the cover. Right. Pink or brown, and possibly in Tibetan, it's the same word inexplicably. Who can say it? I have to look it up. Right. Tibetan colors are funny, but anyway, it means stability, so feel it like an anchor for everything else. Yeah. And if you prefer pink, use pink. We'd have to ask a Thangka painter, why pink, why brown? That's like this. So those are the 2 extras, the green and the brown. Those are not related to those 4 attainments. Yeah.
I feel like a wood that was grown from like a tree of light.
Ooh, nice. Hippie. That will do. Yeah, so so in this sadhana, there's some bits that are going to come up again and again, like the offerings. So just sort of so you know, if you want to look on page 4 where it says blessing the offerings, and then you do prostrations, and then again there's offerings. So whenever you see a blessing the offering section, know that that's only for the people with that specific empowerment. So if you're ever doing that practice in a group, you just think the offerings are being blessed, but not by me. Yes, the offerings are being blessed, but not by me. And so there's going to be the same pattern, but it'll be unique to each deity, but the same exact pattern of first a mantra that dispels all hindrances. And what you think there is all my superstitions about this gone. So it's page 4 in the upper left corner of the white Tara Siddhana we were just doing. So if you got lost, blessing the offerings. And then there'll be a purifying. And that again is to clear superstitions, any fundamentalist thinking, any problematic attitudes towards the practice and the offerings themselves. Like the offerings aren't good enough, or I want those offerings, I don't want to give them to anyone, or what does this do anyway? Or isn't this some random Indian tradition, or whatever like superstitious thoughts you have about offerings. Om Sawavashuddha Sawadama Sawavashuddha Hom. Clear it. Right? It takes the aspect of traditional Indian offerings, but that has never been the point, not even when they were the traditional Indian offerings. So water for washing, water for drinking, flowers, incense, light, perfume, food, and music, where of course what you offered VIPs coming into a space. And that's not really the point. That's just the object we're using as an anchor for a series of thoughts. What do the Buddhas want from us? They want us to practice, so that we're not hurting ourselves, so we're not hurting anyone else, so that we're developing ourselves, so that we're helping each other. They don't want water, they don't care about water, but we should still offer water. Why? Because it represents something, and it creates a habit. So if you don't have all of these offerings, that's fine. These are the tantric offerings. Offering just water is plenty, because we have the attitude that water is precious. Yeah. We all believe water's precious. We all believe water's important. That's not kind of a debatable thing. We all are in agreement about that. And so it's a good offering, but it's also not an offering that's going to trigger miserliness, because we're not going to run out anytime soon. So it's good on that level. There's all sorts of commentaries about what water represents and how to think about it. But all of these, whether we go through them or not, think these are representative of practices. And that is what the Buddhas really want. Yeah, so water for washing, purification. Yeah, water for drinking, accumulation of merit, flowers, open heart of compassion. Yeah, light dispelling darkness of ignorance, incense, ethics, all of these. So these are all interesting things you can read about in any number of places. But what I want you to understand is the philosophy of it rather than the specifics at this point. So the philosophy of it is that these are all representing things that normally tempt our senses. Yeah, our eyes, our ears, our tongue, our nose. These are normally representing the things that make our life distracted and full of attachment. So they have value to us in a worldly sense. And so making an offering of them helps us break the spell of attachment. So on one level, that's already happening just by putting the things on the altar and thinking, yes, I want to offer these. But deeper than that is the practices they represent. Yeah, and that's the real offering. And that's what really pleases the Buddha's mind, even though they are already perfectly happy, right? It's a lot of layers, right? It's a lot of food for thought. Yeah.
Can you go off book and have offerings of your iPhone? I wonder. It depends on things that you might be attached to.
You could plug that in the mandala offering.
Okay.
Yeah, plug those in the mandala. This one doesn't have a mandala offering. Normally they do though.
Okay.
Yeah, plug that in there. So with these traditional offerings, don't get hung up in the form, but use the form, because you might as well ride the coattails of countless practitioners that came before you, but also it helps you organize your thoughts, right? So things from the sense, things from sight, things from, hearing, all of the senses, these are the things we're at war with, but we actually make them the things that we use when we're doing Tantra. So that'll be a repeated theme over and over again. Yeah, is rather than fighting with the senses or disengaging from the senses or breaking attachment related to the senses, now we're using the senses, having gotten a level of control over them by practicing sutra. So in Tantra now, we're elevating that practice and actually using the very things that were once problematic. So that philosophy is something that will be repeated, and you just kind of like let it sit, let it brew. But the blessing part is just for people with the empowerment, and you'll know it's the blessing when you see those substances, agyam, padyam, pupae, etc., bracketed by an om, ahum. Yeah, that's how you know it's the blessing. You'll know it's the offering, like when you see over in the offering, it's om, guru something something, Arya Tara in this case, and then it ends with a pratisahum soha. So when it's om, whatever the offering is, ended by pratisahum soha, that's when the offering actually gets made. So because this is a mixed group, I can't go into a lot of details about blessings, but basically think all of my superstitions about the physical form of the offerings are being cleared. And these things become like uncontaminated wisdom nectar that I offer to the Buddhas. And then during this offering garland, they actually get offered. So before you have the empowerment, just feel like all of that is happening on your behalf. Yeah. And similarly with the Bodhisattva vow, before you have it, you just meditate on bodhicitta or compassion. Once you already have it, this is your time of purifying and restoring both. And then we've got 4 immeasurables, your old friends, nice and straightforward. And then once again, you're meditating on emptiness, and out of emptiness comes the form of Tara. So she was already there, then she dissolved, then she reappeared, and that will be a repeated theme as well. Yeah.
Just a small question on blessing the offerings, dissolving into emptiness. So everything, including everything is dissolved and empty at that point, and you're not Tara anymore. Oh, you can Tara later. Okay. There's something in the sequence that didn't make sense when you're doing it. So maybe I'll put you off. Sorry.
You know, it's tricky with a mixed group.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tricky with mixed group. Tara coming back and forth. Now, the one weird part, which I do need to ask the FPMT people about, is normally there's an instantaneous generation before the offerings get blessed. And for whatever reason, it comes at the end of this, and that might be intentional, but usually first you arise as the deity, then you bless the offering. So I don't know why that's happening there, but anyway, that's a side note, and that's an empowered people's conversation. So putting that to one side, you guys don't need to worry about that at this stage, unless you're going to do the retreat. And if you're going to do the retreat, you have the empowerment and commentaries, and you'll be able to tidy yourself up. So again and again, you're going to be dissolving things out of into emptiness, and things will arise out of emptiness. And that back and forth happens again and again. And this mantra, Za Hum Bam Ho, will start to appear more and more in your sadhanas as well. In the very short versions of sadhanas, they don't have it. They just say, light goes out from the deity, invites all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who dissolve into them. And it just says that. It doesn't say Za Hum Bam Ho. But Za Hum Bam Ho is basically all of that happens, right? That's the mantra of all of that happens. Yeah. And then please bestow the initiation. That's another theme that'll keep happening again and again. And in this case, we're thinking our front generated or crown of the head generated Tara is being bestowed with the initiation. So she already was merged with all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but you're increasing your sense of this is really Tara, really here, by adding this component. So whenever you see the mantra Om Sawatathagata Abhishekata Samaya Shriye Hum, you can visualize empowering deities pouring nectar on the crown of the deity, whether yourself is the deity or the front generated deity, filling them up with nectar so full that it then spills out the crown of their head and the head of their Buddha family appears. And that will be a repeated theme as well. And that's a really good way to figure out which Buddha family do they belong to, right? Because look, the crown, the excess nectar overflowing from my crown transforms into Buddha Amitabha, meaning she belongs to Amitabha's Buddha family. That's how you find out. One of the ways. So repeated themes. We'll have more time to go through this after lunch and do the page through and make yourself some notes about what. But yeah, and this one has layers of mantras, of which are described on the very, very back page of your sadhana. So have a look at that. And I'm going to end a little bit early because my stomach hurts and I need to go take something, but not to fear, it'll pass. It's just the body. So just take a minute and dedicate all of the merits. And really think, may we be able to develop the ability to receive peace, increase, power, and wrath. May we develop the ability to give peace, increase, power, and wrath, exactly in accordance with the needs of sentient beings. And may we quickly attain White Tara's state in order to lead all sentient beings to the same. Okay. So I'll see you after lunch, and we can start the class with questions. So if you get your questions nice and clear, we can start with that, and then we'll do the practice again in a slightly different way.